Hi, this is Zena Harris.
And I'm Mark Rabin.
Welcome to the tie-in. Hello, tie-in listeners. Today, you just have me for the introduction to what we're going to see here in the podcast today. I'm just back from my trip to Australia with the Team Canada Trade Mission because my company, Green Spark Group, is expanding to Australia. So we were fortunate enough to be able to participate in this trade mission, which was, first of all, just a great experience. The folks at the Canadian government did a wonderful job organizing. And so big shout out to them. I know it's a lot of work to put something like that on, and they did a really fabulous job. And secondly, want to give a shout out to the Amazon Ascend cohort, the 6 folks who we had the pleasure of meeting last year from Australia, who came to a big training program that we put on through the Amazon MGM Studios Ascend program. And they came to Toronto and we spent some time together. And they've just been a fabulous group, very engaged group of folks who were working on sustainability in Australia. And we reached out to them when we knew we were going to be going to Australia. And they just put such care and effort into introducing us to people. And I just really appreciate it. This is an industry where sometimes you don't get a lot of support in certain areas, and it is just a breath of fresh air when you do. And it's the kind of thing that, I think we all need to be focusing on. How do we help each other? How do we collaborate? How do we work together? How do we move the needle together? And this was just a fabulous, expression of that, honestly. My colleague Andrew went down to Australia with me and we met with a lot of different people, a lot of different organizations, really tried to get a sense of what was going on down there and how people were working, how they were talking about sustainability, what the resources were, where the gaps were, where the opportunities were, all of that. And I think we came away with some pretty solid understanding, and certainly there's more to learn. So, you know, more effort definitely needs to go into that. And but I think the setup of this trip and the collaboration was just fantastic. So I wanted to give a shout out to those folks and really thank all the folks we met with. Honestly, they were very open and honest and kind of leaning into the conversation and curious. Answered a lot of questions. And honestly, folks are doing a lot down there. I kept hearing like we're behind and whatnot, but like they're ahead in some ways, they're on par in some ways. They're, yeah, everybody's got their places where they're more ahead or kind of lagging behind. So it was just really interesting to learn all of that. And so these two conversations, I had the opportunity to sit down with Zach Lurje and Sarah Tosone, folks who were in the Amazon Ascend program. And I've known Sarah for years as well. She's been working in the space for a long time. So it's just really neat to sit down and have a brief conversation with them, hear their thoughts. I think it's really important to hear directly from the people out there in the field, doing the work, working on set, thinking about the innovative technology and aspects of the industry that's really going to move us forward. So this is two conversations. Bear with us because this is me trying to figure out how to record in a park. So it's a work in progress, I will say. Maybe my next outdoor interviews will be the sound will be a little more crisp or whatever the case. So bear with me on that one. But two conversations, and I'm curious from you all, like what sounds familiar in their story? I think we're all struggling with similar things, and we're all noticing similar things from these conversations I've had with people around the world. So I'm curious from you, what sounds familiar? Please feel free to write in and let us know. You can write to us. Just go to the Tie-In website, and there's a place where you can send us an email and do that, and just let us know. I'm just really curious. There's a lot of stories. We've got now group chats and whatnot from people around the world talking about this stuff. So curious what you hear in this, and I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Welcome to the Tie-In, our little podcast. We're here in Brisbane, Australia. Zach, welcome. Jill, let's just jump in. Tell me what you're up to here. Well, first of all, tell us what you're doing here and your position is here.
Sure. I'm Zach Lurje. I'm a sustainability consultant here in Brisbane, in Meanjin or Magajan, Turrbal and Jagera country here in Queensland, Australia.
Woo!
Yeah, and I've just been working in the film and television industry, working with productions to reduce their emissions, environmental impact, coming up with strategies, and a lot of on-set, hands-on practical work, on location and also in studios as well.
Right. So you're managing all of this activity on production, right?
Yeah, but when I first started, I was called an environmental steward.
Okay.
So I was probably a level below a production assistant or a runner. But then I moved my way up eventually to a coordinator, and now I'd probably say I'd be a consultant, a manager, or a supervisor.
Got it.
The lingo just sort of changes depending where you are. And
when you say steward, that makes me think of Disney, right? Because that's their kind of verbiage that they use. Was it through Disney that you? It
was through Fremantle.
Oh, which is, so they use that
Fremantle,
word too.
UK, and it's, I think they borrowed it from Disney.
Yeah.
They used it with as a program with Fremantle Media Australia and Screen Queensland, which is our local funding body. It's a government funding body. So together they had a program to train an environmental steward, and I was lucky enough to get that attachment. And so that's where I learnt the role, and I started doing this on a kids TV series.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting because all of these names, they kind of mixed and matched at various studios or various companies, or even the positions are not called the same thing throughout the industry. It's just something I've noticed. You probably have noticed that too, right?
Yeah. The PA, environmental steward, they don't really mean anything until you explain to people what you actually do.
Yeah.
And I think coordinator, manager, or consultant is kind of the way to go now.
Yeah.
But yeah, you definitely have assistants.
Yeah.
On set as well.
Yeah, cool. So you're out there on the ground, managing, consulting. What is the coolest stuff you've seen or helped implement on production?
Yeah, well, there's some pretty cool stuff, but it can be a challenge getting there. One simple thing is just switching to reusables on an Amazon and guestwork show recently. It's an Australian production company. We just didn't have single use around catering and unit.
Yeah.
It wasn't really a directive. It was a suggestion, and myself and the unit team just did it.
You just did it.
And we didn't really get any complaints because we just had heaps of backup water bottles and keep cups, and cast would just saunter on down, get their own coffee with their cup and go to their trailer and bring it back.
Like it's not a big deal.
So we just sort of downplayed it, and that became really simple, and that was in some remote locations. We did that as well. So I was really proud to do that. On another show, trialing hybrid battery generator setups where instead of running our generators for 24 hours, because we're often in Australia, we are running a fridge or a cooler trailer.
Right, because it's hot.
Yeah. And the efficiencies are horrible with the generator that's running 24 hours. So using a battery which will just run the whole day and then the generator will kick in to top it up.
Yeah.
I tried that in Northern Territory, which is like a remote community, and that worked really well. You know, we've got our fuel use down to 4 hours a day as opposed to running all the time.
Yeah.
And it has big flow-on effects for production. Like, you don't need to get deliveries, less time on unit crew, and you also get fuel savings.
Yeah.
But, you know, batteries can be expensive as well, so you've got to do the cost-benefit analysis on that. So that's a big win. But other things that I really look for on a production when I know the tide is turning and people are thinking sustainably is when someone will come up to me very early in production, email me, call me, or ask me, hey, I want to do this. How do I go about it? Or do you think this is a good idea? And it means that departments are taking their own initiative. And I usually record on a production what date someone's done that, and how often they've done that, because it tells me how quickly the tide has turned. And it's a good marker of green leadership when you see a HOD or a producer coming to you with a suggestion and going, how do we do this? So that's great to see. I'll just try and think of one more example of things I love seeing. I often think that the material departments are the best and the most innovative. So like costume, props, and art and construction, you know, they really think about where the materials go. So I've worked on a show where a lot of production would just give to an op shop or a charity shop, but city op shops actually are full of stuff. But remote and rural op shops don't have anything. So we decided to package boxes up to remote op shops that don't get stock on a regular basis, that also have a whole audience. So just thinking a little bit more deeply about disposal and where it's going to. I did a show where we filmed in a community and everything that the production bought went back to that community. And it was just a basic thing. And so these are great wins, but they should become standard practice, and that gives you sort of the energy to keep doing it and keep supporting departments to be as sustainable as possible.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like some of this stuff is pretty common sense. Like, why wouldn't we just do this normally? Do you kind of feel that way? Or?
Yeah, a lot of it is common sense, but it's about education, it's about process, it's about ensuring that everyone understands. Because it's a lot of new information for crew that aren't used to working that way, and change is often difficult. So it just has to be a message that's communicated in a myriad of ways, in lots of conversations and rapport building, and led from, you know, leaders like producers and studios and production companies. But then you can do stuff that's not common and really exciting. Like you can, you know, on one production we're tracking our fuel use, and I'll be doing like a live cost benefit analysis, and we'll be using HVO, which is hydro-treated vegetable oil, which is fuel certified made from cooking oil. And that's taken a lot of process to track that and get the certificates for that. But, you know, it has 80 to 90% emissions reduction than burning diesel. So, like, that's a really innovative change for Australia, because the supply has only come to us in the last 2 years. It's mainly gone into the mining, construction industries, not necessarily in film, because we use a small percentage compared to those industries. But that's really exciting. You know, and, you know, we're not an advocate saying that, you know, bio and HVO fuel is the solution to climate change, but it's a transition that we're trialing, you know, so that's exciting. Those things, you know, getting directors and cast used to being in EVs because they're quiet. You know, it gives them that solitude, and the idea of a battery on set is fantastic because you have quiet sets, which people really respect, and it also has less nitrous oxide that's coming out of the Jenny. So like there's a whole less pollutants around the actors and also the crew. So there are a lot of huge benefits for sort of trialing new technology and trying to make it work on your show. But it's really exciting, especially when cast and crews see that the initiatives that you've said you're going to do, you deliver, and they can see it visibly every day on set.
So all this is possible here because you've clearly done it, experimented with it and whatnot. So how do you feel like, is this on the up and up? Are we like, you know, are more crews doing this here, or are you kind of getting, what's the reception?
Yeah, it's often on a a medium to big budget show where you have a
Okay.
sustainability crew. So the independent Australian production companies that don't have an international partner or co-production struggle.
Need some support.
They do, and they're
Yeah.
a long way back in the education.
Okay.
They are in the awareness space, which is
Okay.
like, oh, climate change is real and we need to be thinking about bringing a water bottle to set.
Yeah.
They don't understand that with logistics and planning and fuel and scheduling and using a volume over driving, you know, cutting flights, setting a location radius, all of these strategies,
Yeah.
you know, doing a script review, a climate pass in early development, all of these things, they're kind of very new to them. And they often don't have the budget to be able to handle that.
Yeah.
But it's also, they're very risk averse because, you know, that they are taking a big risk just even doing the production. And so budgeting for something that they don't think is going to give them a reward or a payoff or a benefit, they're probably not going to put it as a budget line item early on.
Right.
But the flip side of that is there are other production companies that do and show that you actually, with careful planning, you can save money.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like just better waste management will save you on your dumping fees. But there's a multiplier effect on that because it means you have less crew that are having to take waste to a dump site in a vehicle.
Yeah.
So, and then you add up those hours and then you think about, hey, if we're more efficient, maybe I could cut the number of rolls because, and I could save a wage there, you know, 50,000, 60,000 for a 6-month production. And a lot of sustainability initiatives, like on the show at the moment, we're doing our compost is costing us $3,500 for 6 months. That's going to equate to, you know, up to 10 tons of compost that we're not going to have to pay that would go to landfill and dumping fees.
Right.
So, you know, it's doable.
Yeah.
It just requires planning.
Yeah.
And the environmental benefit is huge.
Yeah.
And I think the education one is bigger because people are doing this in their homes and they just want to do it at work as well.
Yeah.
So it's that they just don't understand that you compost at home or you got solar panels on your roof at home. You might have bought an EV and now you go to set or you go to your office or your work and it's totally different.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's, you know, you can bring your values and your practices to work also. And just because it hasn't been happening for years and years in that kind of in the work environment doesn't mean it can't happen and you can't, you know, sort of be your full self at work too, right? That's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It is. It is. It is. It sounds like there's a lot going on. There's a lot of interesting and innovative things here. What's the big challenge? Is it that, you know, for us, a lot of times it's equipment supply. Like we know we can do things when we do use clean tech. It's great, folks like it, that sort of thing. But sometimes we just don't have it in supply. Is it the same way here? What's your kind of pain point in that regard?
Suppliers, infrastructure and availability is huge.
Yep.
So I've worked in Queensland before and the availability of hybrids and EVs is really difficult. They're often booked out. On the show that I'm working on at the moment, we booked EVs and hybrids 3 months in advance to secure them.
Wow.
Across multiple companies. So we're currently on 50 hybrids and 10 EVs, which is huge for a location-based show, but it required thinking way before we even went into the production office in pre-production, and myself and the transport manager planning that and booking that, just because of availability. So yes, it is a pain point.
Yeah.
That's definitely an issue. I would say the other issue is there is a lack of bravery in leadership. Because what producers and production companies will say is, we really care about it. Yeah. But they won't follow it through with actions. So it's about changing the behavior and the modeling that I'd say that's coming from leaders. Yeah. You know, if a producer carpools to set and brings their water bottle and keep cup and says, "Hey, can you turn off the vehicle?" It's
a complete
total shift.
Yeah.
You know, it sets the tone. I've worked on shows for Fremantle where it's really common for the producers to jump in a car together and go to set.
Yeah.
You know, they they close the doors on trailers to make sure the aircon doesn't get out because it's quite hot in Australia. Like there's all these simple things that you can do. I've worked with production managers who have just made sure that we're turning off all the lights and all the switches and all the aircon because, over a 6-month production, you're going to save 5 to 10% on your power bill.
Yeah.
And then if you've got holidays built in or you've done a company move and you leave the production office running, there are savings that can be made with simple leadership and behavior modeling and sort of not just telling people that you care, but showing it with action.
Yeah.
I love putting a producer in an EV who's, interstate.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think it's great because, people, we really do look to producers and folks above the line and notice what they do and how they're talking about certain things. So what's next level? Like so we talk, we're talking about on production and influences there and whatnot, but kind of pulling out another layer or level, if you will, what would be what is really gonna, take sustainable production to the next level across Australia, do you think?
I think that's a big question.
I know. I really want to know.
I think in development, it has to be a consideration in development. So in my own projects, it's I think about it even before the script, the script when we're in a concept stage. So I think it needs to be embedded early on. Writers and creatives are really open to it about green messaging and locations and the size, scale, and scope of an action sequence and sustainable behaviors and there's so many training courses out there that you can do, but it shows you that climate storytelling is actually a great contributor to conflict. And you can weave it into your characters' lives, their characters' profession. So just increasing that storytelling awareness is important. So that's what I would say would be the first challenge. But the dream would be to, in a way, not have a job.
Yeah.
So the dream would be not to have a sustainability department on set because it just becomes part of people's professional practice.
Yeah.
And I would say, the material departments like costume, props, art, construction already are innovating in this space and doing it. We now have, and I'm not going to do a product placement, but we do now have biodegradable polyfoam and polystyrene. We have lots of cardboard and ply alternatives that are made from recycled materials.
Yeah.
So there's a whole new product range of things that we can build our sets out of cardboard now.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah,
by the way, the stuff that can happen with cardboard.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
And the transportability of cardboard now is a set too. And there's a lot of stuff we could do with VFX and AI as well. In terms of, like we were talking the other day, do we need 300 extras in a crowd scene, or do we need can we make it 200? And can we backfill with generated characters,
images? Yeah.
And that actually would seriously reduce a footprint over several days of shooting.
Totally.
So those are the things that people are starting to consider. But I think the short answer to your question is just embed it from every stage of the production pipeline, and it's just part of our professional practice. It's the same as we treat people with respect. We want anti-discrimination and no bullying and respect at work, and we want to be inclusive and add adjustments so people can actively contribute in the workforce. All of these things are common sense and basic, so sustainability is the same.
I know. So you recently, there was an open letter that was published in IF magazine. You contributed to it. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, what was the driving force, or what do you hope comes of it?
Yeah, sure. So a number of Australians were lucky enough to go to a sustainability coordinator and manager training offered by Amazon MGM and coordinated by yourself and Green Spark in Toronto. And we also got to visit Pinewood Studios in Toronto and look at, the council power drops. And we also completed some training with the USBC. US
Green Building Council.
US Green Building Council. So it was like a world first certificate. So it was really good. Yeah. But what came from that was the conversations and the professional dialogue with participants and with all of the speakers. And when the Australians came back, I think there was about 8 of us. 8 of us. When we came back to Australia, we said we were so excited and so energized by everything we learned that we wanted to do something with it. So we collaborated and we created an industry letter, a 2.5-page letter to our industry. So our screen bodies, our funding agencies, our distributors, our production companies, and publishing in the national film magazine Inside Film. And it suggested a way forward, a new model. It suggests policy change, it suggests incentives, it suggests, incorporating into every stage of the pipeline. We gave them a series of suggestions of how to reduce emissions right now. And as a way to open dialogue. And so, we're engaging in conversations about that, and I think it's sparked a bit of debate. And there's increased the awareness of it. Just because we think it's easy, it's common sense, done well, you can save money. If not now, when?
I know.
Yeah.
It was a pretty nicely laid out letter, I thought, and a good, good roadmap.
It was a roadmap. Yeah.
I did think so. We'll put a link or share a link to it, so more people, hear about it now and can find it and look at it and see what they think too. It was really neat that you guys kind of came together and did that. I thought it was great.
Yeah, and it was really, I think it was quite it captured a lot of people's perspective, because the 8 Australians that went, we had all worked in Australia, and some of us have worked internationally on tentpole productions, on indie films, on TV series. So it was quite a diverse range of voices. Some were Australians that were working in Canada and working in the UK. Some had been line producers. Some had worked in camera and been writers themselves. So it wasn't like it was just a group of people who'd only done sustainability. Some had been assistant directors as well. So it came from a place of people understanding the challenges of production on the ground. And, what can be achievable, and what a more green future would look like. No, that's great. So I guess just to wrap us out, one of the questions that we ask everyone, so I'm really curious to get your thoughts. If you were to create a new playbook, which, sounds like this letter was kind of part of that process, so maybe this is a repeat, but if you were to create a new playbook or a guidebook, what would be like the number one guiding principle or the number one point on your list? For productions or just for anything?
I mean, you can take it at any level if you want. I'm just curious, the industry, for sustainability in the industry.
I think it's just another lens in your toolkit when you make a decision. So we talk about economic, social and political lenses when we make a decision. I think the sustainable and environmental lens is just as important. And also including, I would encourage First Nations perspectives as well in that sustainability group. And it just needs to inform decision making. Producers will buy ice creams on a Friday for crew because the morale is down, and then they will shoot quicker because they're running out of money and cut budget to art. So an economic decision. So we often see social decisions and economic decisions. But we don't sort of see environmental or sustainability. And I think they're just as important, and they actually can feed into economic and they can feed into the social decision making. So they're interconnected. So it just should be a lens that you're incorporating in your decision making. Some of the best shows and the cheapest shows are very strict with their location radius. If that location is too far out, we're going to reduce it. And it's going to save people travel time. It's going to, But sometimes you just don't have those locations available.
I love that. It really is, in terms of talking about the social dynamic of it all, it really is, I've found, a way to bring people together, bring crew together when you're, making decisions through a sustainability lens. It kind of helps with morale. It helps, like, we're working toward a bigger cause,
Yeah.
like these kinds of things, and it actually gets folks jazzed up.
Yeah, it does.
And they get to do the thing that they may have wanted to do forever but never got approval to do, and you're like, no, we want you to, like, recycle that thing or whatever. It does bring people together, I find.
Yeah, and you'll find in any production there's a champion in every department that has been wanting to do this for years.
Yeah.
And is already doing it.
Yeah.
So you basically just support them and help them go further. I think it's pretty common now for Australian productions in the scripted world, not in reality TV or documentary, but to have really high quotas of recycled and hired materials.
Yeah.
And then really high diversion rates. It's kind of just expected, and it's what those departments do. So if some of the other departments could start innovating as much as they have, I've worked with makeup artists who do not chuck anything away, and bring everything from show to show. It's the same with paint. Paint never gets thrown out. It literally goes across multiple shows. I've worked on shows where a foam set has gone on to 4 shows over the past 2.5 years, and you can see the same piece of foam build across the same show or the same film.
Yeah, you kind of etch your initials on the side when you use it.
And it's great, and that's really great reuse, isn't it? That's like circular economy. So
totally, very cool. Well, thank you for meeting me in the park.
No worries.
The botanical gardens here.
Yes.
I sent another little video from here yesterday or the day before. So this has been my place. And nice product placement.
Oh, no.
I noticed this whole time your reusable cup has been in the background.
Sorry, I was trying to get a nice coffee, but I'll get one after this.
I was like, oh, there we go. Anyway, thank you.
No worries.
Really
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Thanks, Zena.
Hi, Sarah.
Oh my God, Zena!
I know.
You're here in
We're
person.
like really doing this.
Are you like? I have known you over the years, but it's always been on the other side of the world.
Yes.
And now
I know
you're here in Australia.
I know. It's been really. It's been such a cool experience. I meeting you in person and your home, homeland, going to the beach, going to studios and talking with folks around, just trying to understand what it's like to do sustainable production here in Australia. And it's just so, thank you for spending so much time with me, first of all, and
absolute pleasure. And I think it's so good to have a global connection. I think I'm excited about future work opportunities and collaborations as well. I think there's definitely more of a groundswell happening, and more people working in this space. It's still, I think, finding its feet a little bit about what actually, what's working in the role and what's not. How can we improve things? I think it's definitely great to have that support, especially with maybe young people who are working in the space. I think it can be quite difficult and challenging, more than you realize, because you're not only looking at change management within a workplace environment and behavior change things, and that can sometimes be a challenge in itself, because change can be tricky.
Totally.
But I also think the other thing that I think it's good to be aware of is the stuff that you're focusing on is the health of the planet.
That's right.
And I think it can be really quite overwhelming when you're seeing systems that are quite broken in huge ways. Where with scientists and medical doctors are finding plastics in brains and people.
I know.
And and I think sometimes it can feel like you're trying to stop waves from crashing on the beach. Like it's like the analogy of like going to the beach and politely asking waves to stop moving.
Yeah.
It can feel really overwhelming. But I think, to be honest, it's important to keep hope.
Yeah.
And I think face realities, like when things aren't working or when things aren't going well, uh, and I think it's so important to connect with the community
Yeah.
and not feel alone, because I think a lot of people can feel alone working in this
Yeah,
space.
I agree.
So
I agree.
and change can take a lot of time, and I know we might not really have that time, but I think it's also kind of thinking, what's your legacy going to be?
That's right. What do
Like
you
it's
want out of all of this, right? Like,
yeah,
what's the effort really for?
yeah.
So I realized at the top that I didn't properly introduce you. This is Sarah Tosone, and we are right now in Gold Coast.
Yes,
Yeah.
the land of the Yungabar speaking people.
There we go. So it's been a wonderful day. Like, so talk about, so this is the community building, honestly. So I've known Sarah, as you said, for many years, just from a distance, and came here and trying to understand what's going on. And you have just, we've had a lot of chats. We've visited, what was it, Village Road
Show today.
And looked around on the lot. And so just briefly, like, tell me what you do here.
Well, so I have been working in the sustainable environmental film space since 2015.
Yeah.
So it's what,
a long time.
the first one I worked on was a big one. It was 2015, and it was on Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay, that's like one of the largest probably shows ever.
So, and I just fell in love with the role. I thought, wow, this is what we get. This is what we have to do. This is amazing.
Yeah.
So it was. I really love the role. I love the fact that we could do all this, set up systems that were better not just for the show, but can help the wider community, like setting up composting systems. Because at the time, I would call around because I'm like, oh, where can I dispose of large amounts of food waste? And connecting with the woman who worked at the local council, who's an engineer, trying to set stuff up and working collaboratively. We did a trial that has kind of then taken off. So, so it's been, it's a role that I really love in an industry that I love, because I love storytelling. I love the human connection that films and such an artistic, creative, industry, and then to be able to, leverage off that to do good for the planet. It's a dream job.
Totally. A dream job that more and more people are starting to get in on. And this is where that community aspect, I think, really comes together, right? Because I know, like, you and a few other folks from Australia went up to do the spec Amazon Ascend training, and like, you guys seem to like really come together during that experience. And then also with another 25-ish peers from around the world came together in that. And that, I think, was one of the maybe first times that kind of community building has really happened. Or has it? I mean, you tell me. Like,
I think I do think people seem like there does seem to be a bit of a silo happening. And I think there's still a long way to go. But I think I was really impressed by the caliber of people that attended the spec training in Toronto. And I think some, like, normally you think, oh, is it worth we're flying and carbon emissions and everything, but I think it was really good to sometimes be in person and not on a screen. And I think have that human connection working in the space, and then to have like an international cohort that we're on the WhatsApp, so we can reach out to each other, and I think that's a really good thing. So I do see it's a growth industry as well. There's a lot of things working in this space, and it does you have to stay agile because there's a lot of things changing. It's quite, there's a lot of trials that are great to happen. And I think government are interested to know about how these trials work.
Yeah.
There's a lot of entrepreneurs and inventors, coming up with solutions to problems. And so really tapping into the wider industry and problem solving together. And I think, it can be very, very rewarding.
Yeah. So a couple of takeaways from today is that it seems like kind of identifying all the players in the ecosystem is really important, and bringing that together and making that available for the industry. It seems like service providers, vendors for various things, interesting folks who have interesting material that could maybe be used on set, or opportunities with waste and various stakeholders. So that's one big takeaway for me today. What about you? What was something that
I definitely thought that was good, because it was mentioned in a meeting we had at the village, at the studios, that there are so many people working in this space of circular economy, that they might not promote themselves enough. So people might not know what's actually happening in your local community.
Yeah.
And so I think, having more connection is really exciting. And I think more collaboration.
Yeah.
But I think when we're talking film, it's such a project-based, intense industry where it's time, money, like we've got to make great content, and I think it's factoring in the environmental element as well into that decision making, when it's like, what's the cost, what's the time, what's the environmental footprint of those decisions. But I think sometimes I think there's a disconnect between, ideally what's on, like, the ideal situation, like what's on paper or in a plan, and then what the actual reality of that is. And I think there does need support with implementation, because, sometimes things are hard, like to implement. It might sound easy on paper, but
you gotta follow up.
Yeah.
All of that, right?
Yeah, so I think you need to be realistic and properly resourced.
And when we say properly resourced, we're not talking about like one PA, lowest level, who has no experience, who's just like checking a box, right? Like we're talking about knowledgeable people who have experience, who engage with the producer, and engage with leadership, and engage with the studio, and engage with vendors, like folks who have that kind of wherewithal and experience to work with everyone on production, right?
And I know it's another thing has been like, it's everyone's responsibility. I think, of course, it's absolute, like, that's the thing. It is everyone's responsibility. If you hire an eco department or an eco team or a person, an eco PA, it's not their responsibility for the production's rubbish. It's because they're not creating all this rubbish, or they're not, So, but I think it is everyone's responsibility, of course, and I think it does come from the decision makers. If we're deciding to do a film like this size or this size, those things are going to have an impact. So, it definitely is it has to be embedded throughout the whole workplace culture, big time. It is a team effort. So it is definitely everyone's responsibility. But you still, I think, like similar to work health and safety, you still need someone on the ground just to make sure things are going right. You've got that additional support if you need it. And it's.
I think you said one word in particular that stood out to me and that's culture. Like, I think it's like really important to set that culture from the beginning and be proud of what you're doing. Like, why not, right? And like check in and, everybody's asking these questions like, how are we doing today? What are we doing on this? And not just, the one person or maybe two or three, in an eco department, but like folks are like actually talking to each other. Other crew members are talking to each other about this. And that is such a positive culture and way to look at this, right?
And it is like it is looking at the script as well, like going back to the script and looking at the script through a sustainability lens, and kind of going, oh, red flag, that could not be good on camera, or hey, why don't we, it's just adding that element to entertainment now and filmmaking and storytelling, and
it's got to happen, and got to happen consistently, right? Yeah. Very good. Okay, well, we're in a park and it's starting to rain, so we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
Pleasure. Anytime.
Yeah, I might get you again.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, I'm so glad that you came, and I'm so glad that you get to saw a koala and a kangaroo.
I know, I did. Anyway, thank you. All right, we're wrapping out. Bye.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Sarah and Zach. And as always, thank you so much for listening. And we just really appreciate the support. Folks have written in to tell us how much they like the podcast. And, this is all a work in progress. So do write us in. Tell us what you think. Give us your feedback. We are always looking to improve and talk to interesting people. So if you've got any suggestions in that regard, do let us know. Also, please look for us if you go to South by Southwest. We will be running around there and we will have our little mics. And if you want to, share a few things with us to contribute to the podcast, we would be most grateful. You can get in touch with us through the website. The website is Tieinpodcast.com. There's a place for you to email us there. We also are on LinkedIn and Instagram, so check us out there and feel free to drop us a message there as well. We have, we're checking it. So anyway, you can get in touch with us. If you know my personal email address, happy to have you reach out there. But we'll be running around at South by Southwest. So super excited about that one. And honestly, personally, want to give a shout out to Ben Weeby, who actually recommended me to speak at South by Southwest, be a mentor. And so I am really grateful for that and want to thank him for his kindness in recommending me there. So I'll be an official speaker. So if you're interested in talking that way through the fest, learning more about sustainable production, please feel free to sign up for that. And you can find that on the South by Southwest website. You can search my name and sign up for my session. But otherwise, keep up the good work out there, folks, and do give us feedback, like and subscribe to this podcast, and we will see you next time. Our designer is Aaliyah Kane. Music is by Peter Chapman. Our producer is Colin Miller.